Ethan Carter wakes each day with a quiet resolve. He is a decorated military veteran turned diligent city official who now pours his passion into restoring classic cars in his cherished suburban home. His house, a modest yet lovingly maintained property with warm, inviting details, is not just a dwelling, but a sanctuary after years of hardship. Every brushstroke on his vintage '57 Chevy and every restored detail of his weathered porch tells a story of resilience and pride. But the peace is shattered on an otherwise calm morning. Standing outside his home, Ethan finds himself face to face with Karen, the self-appointed HOA enforcer and president. With an air of entitlement and a dismissive smirk, Karen informs him that his porch lights are too bright and a violation of the community's aesthetic standards. Although Ethan has never consented to any HOA regulations, Karen insists that the rules bind every homeowner equally. The tension thickens as Karen clutches a thick envelope containing a final warning notice, her tone dripping with condescension. She asserts that if Ethan does not conform to the board's outlandish demands, fines and further penalties will soon follow. For Ethan, the very idea of government intrusion into his private property is an affront to his independence and a relic of overreach. As the early rays of sunlight illuminate his determined expression, Ethan calmly declares, "I don't subscribe to these arbitrary rules. I own my land, and I'll decide what belongs here." From that moment, the stage is set. Karen, flanked by other smug board members who seem to delight in enforcing a set of rules that appear designed more to intimidate than to help, becomes the personification of entitlement. Meanwhile, Ethan's steadfast commitment to fairness and individual rights is highlighted by his refusal to bend to unreasonable standards. The once peaceful neighborhood now crackles with the promise of a showdown, a battle between personal freedom and authoritarian overreach. Key details introduced. Ethan's backstory and values. A veteran with a deep love for his home and an abiding commitment to personal liberty. The significance of his property. A haven reflecting years of hard work and personal restoration. Karen's character. A rigid, rule-obsessed HOA president whose every move exudes entitlement. Initial confrontation. The first spark that ignites a brewing conflict between individual rights and collective, yet overbearing, control. As the confrontation unfolds, Ethan's defiant yet respectful tone clashes with Karen's unyielding insistence on conformity. This opening segment sets up not only a personal struggle, but hints at larger themes of corruption, the abuse of power, and the price of standing up for what's right. The following morning, Ethan finds the consequences of yesterday's encounter waiting for him. A neatly taped envelope bearing a fine of $750 clings to his front door, a penalty for violating community light regulations. Standing across the street, Karen leans casually against a mailbox, arms crossed in a posture that screams entitlement. "The rules apply to everyone, Ethan," she states coolly, as if reciting a well-rehearsed mantra. Ethan's mind races. He knows the regulations are selectively enforced, if enforced at all, and that Karen's threats have more to do with power than genuine community safety. With a steady hand, he collects the notice and heads to his makeshift office at home, where files and legal briefs lie scattered, a reminder of his dual roles as a public servant and a defender of property rights. Determined to protect his home, Ethan files a formal complaint with the local zoning office. Within hours, a series of anonymous complaints begin flooding in about his property. Soon enough, inspectors arrive, cloaked in the authority of bureaucracy, searching for any hint of wrongdoing. Karen watches with satisfaction as the wheels of her little regime begin to churn. She calls out orders to other board members, confident that she can make Ethan's life a living nightmare. However, Ethan is not one to be bullied. With an extensive knowledge of local ordinances and the backing of city regulations, he calmly challenges the inspector's findings. He cites clauses and precedents, each word measured to dismantle the spurious allegations. The tension mounts on his doorstep as Karen's smug smile slowly falters under the weight of Ethan's legal expertise. In whispered conversations among neighbors, hints of doubt begin to surface. Some recall previous instances of selective enforcement, and a few start to question the legitimacy of Karen's authority. Yet for now, the HOA's power move is in full swing, an intimidation tactic designed to force compliance without regard for fairness or justice. As the day unfolds, Ethan's determination only grows stronger. The fine, rather than demoralizing him, fuels his resolve. In a quiet moment amid the chaos of bureaucratic intrusion, he reflects on the sanctity of homeownership, the idea that a property owner has the inalienable right to make decisions without undue interference. Karen's theatrics have inadvertently united a community that senses an injustice, even if silently at first. In this escalating drama, Karen's tactics are both clear and calculated. With every official notice and threat, she not only aims to punish Ethan, but to serve as a stark warning to all who might dare question the HOA's overreach. Yet, as the day winds down and inspectors depart with no concrete violations to report, the first cracks in Karen's fortress of entitlement begin to show. With the initial fine and intrusive inspections behind him, Ethan senses that the HOA's next move will be even more audacious. Over dinner with a longtime neighbor, he hears murmurs of discontent, a pattern of hidden abuses, secret donations meant to grease the wheels of Karen's power, and whispers of hush money used to cover up dubious decisions. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan begins his own quiet investigation into the HOA's practices. Late one night, while poring over publicly available records at his desk, Ethan discovers irregularities in the HOA's financial statements. Several board members, once trusted by the community, have grown silent or evasive when questioned. One brave soul slips him a note, hinting that Karen has been misappropriating funds for personal luxuries. Armed with this information, Ethan sets up discreet cameras around his property to document any further misdeeds, hoping to catch evidence of corruption or illegal actions that might have been concealed beneath Karen's veneer of officialdom. Karen, for her part, senses that Ethan's defiance is more than a simple act of stubbornness. At the next impromptu board meeting, she ramps up the pressure. In a cold tone, she threatens not only further fines, but hints at eviction notices and even the seizure of property if Ethan does not learn his place. The absurdity of the threats is palpable, yet the implications are serious, a direct attack on the rights of a homeowner. Some board members begin to question Karen's increasingly extreme measures. In hushed conversations after meetings, they wonder whether the rules are being used as a tool for personal vendettas rather than community improvement. Despite their reservations, most are too intimidated by Karen's domineering personality to voice dissent publicly. Still, these murmurs of discontent set the stage for a broader confrontation. Emboldened by the prospect of exposing corruption, Ethan meticulously documents every interaction and every irregularity. He begins compiling a dossier, a chronicle of the HOA's mismanagement, from unexplained expenses to shady deals with contractors. His investigation not only reveals Karen's abuse of power, but also uncovers an unsettling truth. The HOA's authority was never meant to extend to the minutiae of personal property choices. Yet here they are, overstepping every legal boundary. As the evidence piles up, Ethan contemplates his next move. The stakes are high. Challenging the established order could unseat a deeply entrenched system of control, but doing nothing would mean the erosion of every homeowner's rights in the community. Late nights spent cross-referencing codes and regulations solidify his resolve. He's preparing for a counterattack, a public showdown that promises to expose the rot at the heart of the HOA. Meanwhile, Karen's tactics grow bolder and more desperate. Anonymous complaints morph into official citations, and, in a shocking twist, a threat of eviction is floated during a neighborhood gathering. The community, already teetering between fear and frustration, begins to see Ethan as a beacon of resistance. Even as Karen employs underhanded tactics to discredit him, a few courageous neighbors lend him their support, quietly whispering that perhaps the time for change has come. In this segment, the tension mounts as personal courage and systemic corruption collide. Ethan's gathering of irrefutable evidence signals not only a turning point in his personal struggle, but also the potential beginning of a collective uprising against a tyrannical regime. One cold, dismal morning, Ethan awakens to a surreal sight. A section of his pristine driveway is being violently excavated. Bulldozers and utility trucks converge as Karen, with an air of unyielding authority, proclaims that the HOA is expanding the sidewalks for the greater good. The demolition of his private space is both an affront and a blatant act of overreach. Refusing to stand by, Ethan gathers every shred of legal documentation he can find. At the next scheduled HOA meeting, a cramped room filled with anxious homeowners and self-righteous board members, he strides in carrying a thick file of evidence. With measured calm, he begins laying out the legal basis, showing that the HOA has no authority to commandeer private property for its own projects. As Ethan reads aloud excerpts from city codes and county records, the atmosphere in the room shifts. Whispers ripple through the crowd. Some board members shift uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions betraying doubt for the first time. But Karen remains obstinate. When confronted with the irrefutable evidence, her eyes narrow, and she fires back with vague threats and heated rhetoric. "This isn't just about your house, Ethan. It's about the sanctity of our community," she bellows, though her tone carries the desperation of someone clinging to power. With the room divided, a small but determined faction of neighbors begins to rally behind Ethan. Their quiet murmur turns to murmured support, and a sense of communal justice slowly overcomes the room. Outside, a small group of homeowners gathers, recording the meeting on their phones, a silent protest against tyranny. Ethan capitalizes on this momentum by publicly posting the legal documents and security footage online. In a dramatic display, he uploads a video montage of the earlier demolition combined with detailed commentary on the illegality of the HOA's actions. The video quickly goes viral among the local community, drawing the attention of local media and sympathetic legal experts. Karen's face, once the unquestioned symbol of authority, begins to tarnish as more people learn of her extrajudicial measures. Even as Karen scrambles to regain control, her panic is evident. In private, board members exchange worried glances, and some begin to withdraw their support. Yet, in the public meeting, she clings to her position, refusing to admit defeat. Her insistence only galvanizes Ethan further. In a moving speech that balances anger with hope, he declares, "We are not subjects in your experiment of control. We are homeowners with rights, and today we stand together to reclaim our dignity." The clash reaches a fever pitch as the meeting descends into chaos. Ethan's legal acumen and the undeniable evidence of corruption create an unstoppable tide. Karen's scripted responses falter under the scrutiny of the gathered crowd and the glare of the local press. The once impenetrable veneer of the HOA's power now shows signs of inevitable collapse. In this dramatic turn of events, Ethan not only defends his personal property, but also lights a spark of rebellion among the residents. The battle is no longer his alone. It has become a collective stand against arbitrary power. With every statement, every piece of evidence laid bare, the community inches closer to a reckoning that will forever alter the neighborhood's future. Not willing to concede defeat, Karen opts for one last desperate gambit. One humid afternoon, as neighbors gather for a community barbecue to discuss recent events, Karen makes a fateful decision. She calls the police. Her claim? That Ethan's unorthodox porch lighting constitutes a public disturbance that endangers the neighborhood's tranquility. As uniformed officers arrive and survey the scene, the tension is palpable. Ethan, ever calm under pressure, calmly produces his city official badge and identification. His explanation is succinct yet forceful. The lights are neither disruptive nor illegal. They are a personal expression of his right to own and enjoy his property. The police, already exasperated by repeated calls for trivial matters, quickly side with Ethan, their disdain for Karen's antics evident in their dismissive attitudes. But Karen is not done. In the shadows of her desperation, she hires a private investigator, intent on digging up any scandal or misstep that could once again discredit Ethan. Her plan is to build a dossier of evidence to justify further action against him. Late one evening, as Ethan reviews footage from his newly installed security cameras, He notices a figure skulking around his garage, a clear violation of his privacy and an unmistakable sign of espionage. Without missing a beat, Ethan secures the footage and compiles it with every other piece of evidence he's collected. At the very next HOA meeting, the tension is electric. In a calculated move that leaves the room in stunned silence, Ethan plays the incriminating security video on a large screen. The grainy footage shows not only the hired investigator, but also hints of Karen's direct involvement in orchestrating the surveillance. The evidence is damning. Karen's actions have crossed from bullying into outright illegal behavior. The impact is immediate. Gasps fill the room as neighbors lean forward in disbelief. For the first time, many who had been uncertain now see the full scope of Karen's abuse of power. A murmur of indignation spreads like wildfire. Board members, who once stood by her side, now exchange uneasy looks, their loyalty crumbling under the weight of incontrovertible proof. Karen, her face flushed with anger and humiliation, tries to speak over the clamor. But her voice falters as more questions arise, questions about her ethics, her use of HOA funds, and her blatant disregard for the law. The police report from earlier, combined with the private investigator's slip-up, creates a narrative that cannot be ignored. It is a narrative of desperation, manipulation, and abuse. In a final pitiful attempt to regain control, Karen blurts out a feeble justification, one that crumbles instantly under legal scrutiny. The meeting ends in chaos, with residents demanding accountability and a call for immediate action from city officials. For Ethan, this is the mic drop moment. Not only has he defended his own rights, but he has also exposed the rot festering within the HOA's leadership. As the officers leave, clearly unconvinced by Karen's flimsy rationale, the tide of public opinion has irrevocably turned. Karen's desperate gambit has only sealed her fate, leaving her isolated and facing a future filled with legal challenges and public disdain. In the days that follow the explosive HOA meeting, the community's collective outrage ignites a revolt. What began as Ethan's personal stand transforms into a movement. Homeowners, emboldened by the evidence and Ethan's unwavering commitment to justice, band together to demand accountability. A special meeting is called, and this time, the voice of the people cannot be ignored. At the gathering, nearly every homeowner takes a stand. They recount stories of previous abuses, fines that were levied without cause, arbitrary decisions, and the constant intimidation that Karen had used to maintain her grip on power. The mounting evidence and impassioned speeches force even the most timid board members to reconsider their positions. In a dramatic vote, the residents decide that Karen is no longer welcome. With a clear majority, she is ousted from the HOA board. The shock is palpable. For months, Karen's control had seemed unassailable, a monolith of entitlement built on half-truths and intimidation. Now, stripped of her authority, the very system she manipulated begins to crumble. City officials, spurred on by community outrage, open a formal investigation into the HOA's practices. Fines are levied against the board for misusing funds and for enforcing regulations without proper authority. Ethan watches as the dominoes fall. The once dreaded meetings now serve as platforms for accountability and transparency. The evidence he painstakingly compiled becomes the cornerstone of a class action lawsuit filed by the residents. Even the state's Bar Association takes notice, launching its own probe into the shady dealings of Karen's longtime lawyer friend. As legal documents pile up and media attention grows, Karen's personal life starts to unravel. Her once pristine home, now a symbol of corruption, is suddenly placed on the market. Late one evening, while sipping a cup of coffee on his fully lit porch, a silent act of defiance, Ethan can't help but smile as he watches the community reclaim what was always rightfully theirs. The downfall of Karen isn't just a legal victory. It's a triumph of truth and unity over intimidation and corruption. In the wake of these events, neighbors come together to rebuild not just their homes, but the very fabric of their community. The HOA, once a tool of oppression, is reformed from the ground up, its policies redrafted to protect individual rights rather than serve as instruments of control. Karen's legacy is now a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of what happens when power is abused for personal gain. With Karen's ouster and the community's uprising in full swing, the legal repercussions for the HOA are swift and severe. The city, responding to overwhelming public pressure, issues fines for operating outside its jurisdiction. A class action lawsuit, spearheaded by Ethan and supported by dozens of homeowners, moves rapidly through the courts. As legal documents circulate and investigations deepen, several board members find themselves facing individual legal challenges. Some are charged with misappropriating funds. Others are scrutinized for their passive complicity. The once formidable HOA now stands as a monument to what happens when unchecked power goes awry. Ethan, ever the diligent public servant, makes one final power move. In a press conference held at the local community center, he stands before a sea of relieved residents and local journalists, detailing the full extent of the corruption uncovered. With his dossier in hand and the video footage projected behind him, he delivers a succinct but powerful message. Today, we reclaim our rights. Today, justice is not just a word, it's a promise fulfilled. The outcome is clear. The HOA is forced into dissolution, its leadership disbanded, and its funds frozen pending further investigation. For many homeowners, this marks not only an end to the tyranny they suffered, but the beginning of a new era of community governance, one built on transparency, accountability, and respect for personal liberty. Karen's personal life soon mirrors the collapse of her professional empire. Once the undisputed queen of a tightly controlled neighborhood, she now finds herself a pariah. The media picks up her story, and social media buzzes with satirical memes and public ridicule. In a matter of weeks, her face becomes synonymous with entitlement gone wrong. Rumors spread that her lavish lifestyle was funded by misappropriated HOA funds, a claim that, while unproven in every detail, adds to the narrative of her greed. Her longtime partner, emboldened by the public scandal, files for divorce. Meanwhile, her prize car, a symbol of her former status, gets repossessed, a final, bitter twist of fate. In one particularly humiliating scene, Karen is spotted at a local government office, desperately attempting to explain away yet another fine. Her stammered excuses fall on deaf ears as former supporters turn their backs on her. The woman who once dictated the rules is now forced to face the consequences of her own hubris. Ethan, watching all of this unfold from his porch with a quiet sense of poetic justice, offers a wry smile. The scales of justice have tipped, and the community's victory is complete. I hope you like following the rules, he quips to an ex-board member who mentions Karen's new, humble job as an assistant property manager for another HOA, a role that seems almost ironic in light of her past transgressions. In the months that follow, the neighborhood basks in the light of a hard-won freedom. The oppressive rules of the former HOA have been scrapped, replaced by a cooperative spirit and transparent governance. Neighbors now freely share stories over backyard barbecues and community picnics, celebrating not just their restored properties, but their reclaimed voices. Ethan, now seen as the unlikely hero of the community, enjoys long evenings on his porch. The soft glow of his lights is no longer a source of contention, but a symbol of personal triumph. As laughter and friendly banter fill the air, someone, with a mischievous grin, hands him a fake violation notice, this time for excessive neighborliness. Ethan smirks, the memory of Karen's tyrannical reign now reduced to a cautionary tale told in hushed tones at block parties and neighborhood meetings. In that final moment, as the screen fades to black on a community united by justice and common sense, the message is unmistakable. No one is above the law, and even the most entitled can fall when the people stand together.